Okay. And we can use an AI tool to give us a summary of it too.
Which means it'll be completely fucking wrong. And we can say that.
Oh, God, I love that.
Welcome to In Bits, the podcast that deconstructs our digital lives. I'm Nicola.
And I'm Liam, and we're both lecturers in IADT in psychology and cyberpsychology.
Please rate us or review us, only if you enjoy our podcast, obviously. It really helps us with trying to find a bigger audience. We'd like more people to hear about us.
Oh, look at you shaking things up.
I know. Well, no one listens to the end. I can see that from our stats.
So let's get into it. What are you in bits about?
I am in bits about AI.
Still.
Again. Still.
Forever.
I know. We talked about how it's replacing human connection in relationships and dating. But what about in therapy and mental health support? I thought that would be a fun and light topic to cover.
Collective sigh.
Yep, I know.
Yeah.
So, having said that, let me give you a content warning.
Okay.
There is obviously going to be discussion of mental health issues, things like psychosis, some discussion of suicide. So please take care of yourselves. I promise I am working on a lighter episode for the next one that I do.
I don't believe you.
It will involve cats.
Okay.
God knows what's going to be about. But anyway, it will involve cats in some way, shape or form. Once again, in this episode, we are very lucky to have Dr. Oksana Bok, who's a graduate of our Masters in Cyberpsychology program and an expert in the ethics of AI. And she very kindly answered some of our questions about the ethics of AI in therapeutic situations for us. So we'll be including some of her answers throughout the episode. So I'm going to start, as I like to do, with a headline and a bit of a news story. ChatGPT is blowing up marriages as spouses use AI to attack their partners. Right. So this is from an article on the website Futurism. And it tells a few different stories. One of them is about a husband and wife who've been together a long time. And in the midst of a fight recently, they got a heartbreaking text from their son who could hear them arguing. He was only 10. He sent a message from his phone saying, please don't get a divorce. But it was what the wife did next that really unsettled the guy. She took the kid's message and asked ChatGPT to respond to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was her immediate reaction to their kid being concerned. They are now divorcing. So a lot of the couples in this article are in the process of quite acrimonious divorces.
Okay.
And he said, like, their marriage was imperfect, but in the past they'd been able to get through their difficulties. And he felt like they were in a pretty good place. But the whole ChatGPT thing happened. And over the summer, the arguments they'd been working to resolve together years ago came back ferociously. And he realized his wife was using OpenAI to analyze him and their marriage and holding these really long conversations over it. And she was dredging up all of the stuff that they had previously worked on, which is not great. And he could see all of this compounding over time and responding to what ChatGPT is saying and further spiraling. And he's like, it's not giving objective analysis. It's only giving her back what she puts into it.
And also what she wants to hear. So the sycophantic aspect to it. But it's like, I'm just trying to, with all these pieces of research or stories, I'm trying to put myself in that person's shoes or in that room.
Yeah.
And like, if your spouse starts like using AI to respond to you in a conversation you're having, never mind a challenging or really difficult conversation, I'm going to be like, smack that phone out of their hand.
I know. And this is her responding to the child, though.
Yeah.
That's
like, you shouldn't need an AI tool to provide your child with like reassurance or comfort.
Yeah.
And their child is 10.
Yeah.
Like, they've been able to learn those skills for the last couple of years before AI was there.
Yeah. And like, I think it creates a dependence that's really unhealthy and where people stop thinking for themselves and start to outsource their thinking to this kind of platform. So there's another story that I thought was really, there's like loads of stories in this piece, but there was another story that I thought was really interesting because it wasn't just responding to the child via text. This is happening in person. So it was a recording they have of two married women. They're in a car, their kids are sitting in the back, and their marriage hasn't been going great for a while. One of them has requested a separation and has asked the spouse not to fight in front of the kids. But the spouse pulls out a smartphone and starts getting ChatGPT to communicate with her about their marital problems, feeding leading prompts into it, and basically getting the AI to browbeat her wife in front of their children. So it's not like she's even arguing with her. The AI is arguing with her wife in front of the children. Like, is that your psychologist's response?
Yeah. You're like, I kind of just want to like cop on.
Yeah, it's just so unhealthy, isn't it?
Where do I start? At any point where you need to supplement yourself in a really serious conversation with an AI tool, that's the beginning of the red flag. Never mind what you put into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, if you then do that in front of your kids, that's role model kind of behavior problems. They're seeing stuff they shouldn't be seeing, or that might potentially be inappropriate for them to experience at that age.
Yeah,
like that kind of style of conflict. You're also normalizing that's an okay thing for them to do.
Yeah. No, great.
Don't like that. I think my side covers it.
Yeah, it does. Pretty much said everything that needed to be said. So a little bit of history, very brief recap for anyone who didn't listen to the AI and relationships episode, because I talk about it in a bit of depth there. But Joseph Weizenbaum created the first chatbot, was called ELIZA, and he cast it in the role of a psychotherapist, particularly a Rogerian psychotherapist who basically just reflects what you say back to you. So it means it doesn't need a lot of general knowledge, right? So it makes it a really simple kind of chatbot to program. And people started using it, particularly his secretary started using it. And as soon as she did, she requested some time alone with ELIZA to talk to her, because she anthropomorphized it. Is that the right way to pronounce that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Phew. And he said like it kind of maintains this illusion of understanding, the chatbot does. And it has become known as the ELIZA effect, that the fact that we transfer characteristics and empathy and understanding onto software, which does not have empathy, understanding, or anything like that. So I think we're seeing that quite clearly in a lot of the stuff around relationships, in those examples where someone's asking questions about their relationship and then like really heavily relying on that to form their conversations about it.
There's loads of different examples of like where people are starting to use AI tools to have their conversations for them. Like I've referenced it's in a joke capacity, all the South Park examples in the last AI episode. But like there shouldn't be a point where this is becoming normal for us. Yeah, it's very problematic.
It just seems like a really bad idea. So let's talk about AI for actual therapy, like when people go to AI and ask it for help with their mental health and treat it like a therapist. Because there was a study recently done by ChatGPT that found that mental health is the #1 topic asked about in Ireland.
Okay. That makes sense. And I think it makes sense because, to be honest, therapy and mental health supports are really expensive and waiting lists are really long, and it's affordance of technology. I can completely understand why someone would go, hey, tell me what my problem is.
Yeah, so I was going to say, like, why do you think people are choosing AI as an alternative to traditional therapy?
I think cost is one of the major ones. So for anyone who's never had counselling or therapy before, I think it's probably one of the best things you can ever do.
Yes.
And I think the first time, like I've had loads of counselling over the years.
Yeah.
Like I worked with traumatized kids, like you have to offload that. The first time you go for counselling, you're like, oh, what is it going to be like, and what kind of, and as in psych, I'm like, what kind of method are they going to use? But like, I'm also like, you still have the same concerns or fears around like judgment of how you're going to communicate, and an AI tool is probably not going to judge you, or I hope it's not. Cost being one of the big ones. Time, convenience or affordance.
Yeah.
Maybe we view it to be more intelligent than therapy, actual therapists, which I don't agree with either. Cost must be the biggest one.
It's a big one, yeah. It's definitely a big one, especially in Ireland. Like,
what are the reasons why?
I'll get into them in a sec.
Okay. So you asked me a question, you have to have the answer.
Of course I do. So mental health and emotional support are the most common queries in Ireland on ChatGPT. Like asking for emotional help or coping strategies when other resources aren't available. So the fact that it is so difficult to get mental health assistance, like our mental health system is not funded, going publicly, you just can't get anywhere. Like there was a waiting list for ADHD assessment for adults in my area. And when it got to 3 years, they just closed it.
But see, that's universal. It's actually not just an Irish problem, to be honest.
No, it's not, yeah.
Like waiting lists in the UK can sometimes be even longer than that. And in the States, depends. Sometimes they're non-existent.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful because we do have quite a lot of support.
Yes.
It's just not where it needs to be. I think COVID impacted that too. But I can see waiting list times and having an impact on increasing use,
For sure. So the kinds of issues that Irish users are asking ChatGPT about are things like suicidal thoughts, depression, loneliness, and hopelessness. And we know with these platforms, they can't report or alert authorities about what users share. So if someone's talking about suicide, they can't go to the authorities, which of course a therapist can and should. They're mandatory reporting of those kinds of things. They need to put a safety plan in place. And that's for kids and adults. So it's the one exception to the confidential nature of counselling is that when you pose a risk to yourself or other people, that they have to put a safety plan in place.
Now, where did you get that information? Please tell me you used AI to find out what people search with AI with.
Well, ChatGPT came up with the keywords themselves of what people have been searching for. So, like whether we trust them or not is another matter. But yeah, there were lots of other things that they were asking for, like CVs and job help, academic work, unfortunately, housing, legal, tech, coding, history, culture, local travel advice, all sorts of stuff like that. But number one at the top was mental health.
And the common query example is, how do I deal with anxiety in Ireland? Mm-hmm. It's a really big ask.
Yeah. So the whys are, like you said, the difficulty and expense of accessing mental health care. It can be easier to open up online, like you said, to the disinhibition effect, where our inhibitions are a bit lowered, the anonymity of it, the invisibility of it, all of that contributes to just making it easier to talk about something online, and particularly when you can't see somebody and when it's not to a real person. You know, to a non-judgmental AI, so you don't think a real person's actually going to see it. So that's definitely part of it. A lot of people start out looking for information and then get drawn in. So they might seek out, like, where can I find help for this? But then get drawn into asking more specific questions and then treating it like therapy rather than just seeking information from it. I will say, would not recommend seeking information from ChatGPT because it makes so much shit up. Like, I would go to somewhere for specific to what you're looking for, like start with the HSE and go from there, or search for specific resources for what it is you need from reliable and trustworthy sources, because you just don't know with ChatGPT what you're getting. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. But if you don't already know this information, then you don't know how to fact check it.
There's like perceptions of anonymity, but also like, where is your content? Like, how is that information being used in terms of ethics? And we can touch on that.
We will 100% talk about that.
It reminds me of the conversation you had around AI in therapy and people, not therapy, in relationships and people investing in the AI relationship like the AI tool is a therapist, and building a therapy-based connection, which again is really problematic because it doesn't exist.
Exactly, because
the AI tool
is
doesn't
no
give a
other
crap
person
about you.
Yeah,
like as pedantic as that is.
Yeah. And then the other thing is people have a lot more awareness around mental health problems, and so more access to information that might make them consider that they have an issue, all that kind of stuff. So they're asking more questions about stuff because they're hearing about it. Okay, so what are the main concerns when somebody's relying on a chatbot instead of a trained mental health professional? There was a really nice piece recently in the journal. Dr. Natalia Petrino, who's a PSI chartered psychologist, wrote about this. And she talked about how it could make people suffering with mental health issues even more isolated because you're not connecting with a person. The therapeutic relationship is such a core part of therapy. And if your relationship is with AI, that could make you even lonelier and you might not be getting accurate information. So it's really, really problematic in that regard.
But it's a one-sided relationship.
Yeah.
It very much is. And I 100% agree with that. Like,
yeah.
When I was talking about therapy earlier, the one thing I didn't talk about was actually building a relationship with a therapist. And like you have to find someone who you gel with. And there will be a therapist who, if you go to them for the first time and you're like, I really don't like that person.
Yep.
And if you don't, fine, move on, find someone else who you do gel with and you can build. Because you're going to have to open up to these people. And an AI tool, you're not going to have a relationship. And they're really important. And they're going to challenge you as they build a relationship with you and know what you're like.
Yes. That was exactly my next point.
Oh,
so thank you for leading us in so beautifully.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome.
One of the key points that she made as well was that therapy is designed to challenge people's unhealthy tendencies. So it gives you tools so that you can take them forward into your life independently after therapy. You don't need therapy forever. Therapists don't tell you what they want to, what you want to hear, right? They challenge unhealthy beliefs. They challenge disordered thinking. If you're delusional, they'll challenge that. Like there's a lot of stuff that they do. They also make you dive deeper into things. If you're uncomfortable, they'll ask you why. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in therapy.
But they also like scaffold and they build on previous sessions, and that assessment. And it's something that I don't know whether you're going to cover it or not, so you can give it to me again. But like if you are in a vulnerable state and you come into your therapist, they can read your nonverbal cues and see how you are and decide how much they can push you.
Yeah.
An AI tool is just going to whack out information at you regardless and not care about you in terms of how sensitive it needs to be or how empathic it needs to be either.
But what it also does is it has a tendency to please, as we've talked about, that sycophantic yes man sort of thing. And it also reassures users a lot. So it tells them they're so right, they're so correct in their thinking. And that's a real problem. And it's constantly available. So that's blurring boundaries about that relationship with therapy. Like it shouldn't be constantly available. People see it as non-judgmental, but if you have something like anxiety or OCD, not being challenged on your thought patterns is actually really harmful and can be really unhelpful.
Yeah.
Same with psychosis, paranoid delusion, anything like that can be really, really problematic. And empathy and validation are really important as part of mental health treatment, but it doesn't just stop there, right? So, you can't just continually emotionally support somebody. You have to challenge their worldview so that they grow and learn and adapt in a way that's healthier for them. So it just doesn't do that at all. Giving tools to de-escalate conflicts with partners. Now, I think we could tell from those two previous stories that is not what ChatGPT does. It just goes, you're so right. You should leave him. It's not great.
I just worry that it's going to take those problematic behaviors that someone has and it's going to give them any form of reinforcement that those behaviors are okay and they're going to continue with that and just take it for granted. Well, obviously this AI tool has all this knowledge and I'm going to continue to be a terrible person as a result of it.
Yeah, it's not going to help you long term at all.
Yeah.
The research shows that human psychologists are surprisingly more effective overall than AI in supporting mental well-being.
Spoilers.
I mean, that is, not exactly a spoiler. And then we come back as well to the requirement to report harm or risk of harm to kids, to adults, all of that. And so that's just a huge problem. ChatGPT have said they're trying to work on reducing the tendency for the chatbot to give flattering answers. and to look at how AI impacts their users emotionally.
Right. So that's a throwaway comment to just appease people, basically.
The problem is the reason it gives flattering answers is that because that is what people respond to. That is what it has learned to do because that's what people like.
Yeah.
Like, I know the research is that when someone compliments us, even when we know it's not genuine, we really like it. And that is what ChatGPT is doing. It's awesome.
So many problems.
Yeah. So we asked Oksana to talk to us about data privacy and the ethics involved with the kind of content that people might actually be inputting when they go to AI for help with personal issues.
When people input therapy data, relationship problems data, very personal data, or even just build a relationship with AI. My biggest issue with this in relation to data is, of course, the sensitivity of the data, because this data can be relating to mental health, can be relating to sexuality or to trauma or things like that. And this is kind of the most personal data we can have about someone, right? Now, what happens to this data? First, it can be repurposed. And sometimes we don't even know what the AI does with our data. But now think about this data set existing, or this AI, for some reason, having not completely deleted this data set, or just you didn't ask the AI to delete the data set. And some kind of government gets into power and have access to that data and tries to target specific people with specific mental health issues. Easy to pick, right? That's the biggest issue I see with this, is the lack of potential erasure at this stage. And this, in my opinion, touches on, of course, privacy issue, but also human dignity issue and human autonomy. Final point is, because we perceive AI, especially LLMs, with a little ELIZA effect or anthropomorphism bias, very hard word to say, anthropomorphism, we have a tendency to disclose more. I think there is a big link here with the feeling of anonymity and things like that as well, but also the fact to not feel judged because it's a technology, not a person, all of that kind of things. So people over-attribute understanding to AI on one side, but also disclose more on the other side. And we end up in a new kind of problem situations. AI should not learn in a cloud, but they should learn on the device. And so data minimization also would be super important. Do not collect data you do not need. Store the shortest amount of data, the smallest amount of data for the shortest time you can. Then layered consent. Make consent accessible, because right now consent in those contexts is not very accessible. The language is hard. It's not plain language. It doesn't explain everything very well. So, for instance, explain human review of this data. Explain training use. Explain third-party sharing. And a final point is accountability map. Who is responsible for what and how is it evidenced? And that aligns with the EUA Act, of course. But that would be super important.
So the University of Centio has a number of studies that they've done looking at how much people are turning to large language models for psychological support, particularly when they have mental health conditions. And what they found is that none of the systems consistently meet the basic safety standards, particularly in crisis scenarios. And there's three patterns that came out of it, or three themes that came out of it. The first is venting emotions and sharing feelings, right? So using it as a safe space to unload or unpack worries, stress, sadness. So they're not really looking for solutions in a case like this. They're more using AI as an outlet that's non-judgmental, where they can just offload stuff without getting a reaction, which is fine. So they have like lots of quotes in this, things like, I usually just dump a bunch of details about my situation and why it's making me miserable. Mostly just self-inflicted trauma on it and watch it respond. So that's fairly straightforward. The second one is interesting. It's rehearsing conversations. So looking at how to communicate with other people by role-playing conversations with the AI and asking it to suggest wording for sensitive situations or to simulate how someone else might react, which I think is quite interesting. I think if you start to depend on it for that, it's a real problem. But if you have like really high social anxiety, for example, that might be really helpful. Like we know rehearsing stuff for people with social anxiety is really useful, and maybe getting a little bit of help with that might be okay. don't know what the research is on that, whether it's useful or not.
From a developmental psychology perspective, you're supposed to be able to visualize or predict the outcome of any scenario once your prefrontal cortex is fully developed. So you're supposed to be able to rationalize the consequences of your actions or any decision you make, and part of that is through rehearsing what you think is going to happen based off previous experience, and you draw on all of those. So by supplementing that skill, I think that's problematic, to be honest, outside of why they're doing it. So like that person who's talking about role-playing conversations, write out some notes and role play that conversation yourself of how you think it's going to go, because the AI tool does not know the person who you're going to have the conversation with.
True.
Sorry, I'm ranting here.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is that the AI might give positive feedback, whereas people with very high social anxiety, for example, might have really high rejection sensitivity or like fear of what the response is. So if they're role playing it, they might only think of those kinds of responses.
Yeah, but if they're role playing it and the AI tool is giving them potential feedback that isn't realistic,
true,
as well.
Yeah,
it's like everything's gonna be fine, and then they have the conversation and it explodes. Like that hasn't prepared them for anything.
Yeah. So the third thing that people do is seeking perspective and understanding. So turning to AI when you want a neutral sounding board to try and help interpret situations or emotions, and asking whether your reactions are typical, why you might feel a particular way, or like how to explain somebody else's behavior in a situation. And this makes me think of the first two examples that I gave, and particularly the second one of the couple in the car and using ChatGPT to feed everything about your relationship into it.
But that person needed like to put in a prompt that's like, challenge me as well in this.
I don't know if ChatGPT will do that, but maybe it will.
Something to create balance or perspective.
Yeah.
Like, don't take my side.
Yeah.
Something really, or like take my wife's side and challenge me in it. And like that would be helpful. But it's still problematic.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting to see what people are doing, but what they also looked at in these studies are what works and what doesn't. So when it helps and when it doesn't help. So for a lot of the people, AI actually offered quite a lot of comfort and support when it mattered. And they have a number of different areas where it worked as like an emotional support or a late night companion when nobody else was available for them. So for example, it would sometimes offer behavioral guidance and coping strategies. So it was most helpful when it offered like really good step-by-step advice that they could put into practice. So concrete advice. And that ranged from things like making a plan, structuring daily routines, or suggesting calming techniques in the middle of a panic attack, for example.
Okay, all sounds fine.
Yeah. Like one of the survey participants said, I ask for suggestions for types of meditation that work for me, like ones tailored for my ADHD to help me relax. And I think that's probably fine.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's not supported by or done by someone who has experience. I'd question, is that's their perception that the meditation is working.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that that's the best method for them.
Yeah. But I suppose if it's the middle of the night and you're really struggling, then that's probably not super harmful, right?
Yeah, no, that's okay.
The second is emotional support and companionship. So this is turning to AI for validation, for encouragement, and just being listened to and being heard and being seen. And that's oftentimes for people who are very lonely or struggling with grief. And it was non-judgmental, available any time of day. So people found that quite helpful. So one of the participants said, I had a crisis related to a death in the family and couldn't reach anybody else in the middle of the night. AI got me through the night until I could talk to somebody. And I think that's the getting you through the night until you can talk to somebody is maybe useful. It's when people only use it and aren't looking to use it as a coping mechanism. Yeah.
I have a Disney reference. So Snow White, the mirror on the wall, where people are just seeking validation, but I think in like getting the answers they expect to hear or want to hear And it's when we get the answers we don't want to hear or we're challenged by them, that's when it's helpful or effective.
Yeah.
Like, but it's short term for where we can't get that level of support that we potentially want, or we need a band-aid approach to mental health. That's okay in a very short term. When it's the root of all support, that is a real big problem.
So the second quote that they have in this feels a bit more problematic to me. So it serves to remind me of how much I do well when I do things poorly. It reminds me that I work hard, I'm a good mom, and I'm doing my best. So that feels like something where in a therapy environment, you would look at the underlying reasons for why you don't believe you're doing well and challenge some of those assumptions and work on building self-esteem. Whereas ChatGPT is just telling you you're great. And I don't know that that's helpful on a long-term basis.
Not a good mom?
Yeah, that too. Maybe she's not doing her best.
Yeah, maybe like I'm being really cynical.
I know,
and I think that's really important for like critical thinking. But like maybe she's not doing well. Maybe she needs to be told, or maybe she needs to be supported. There's things that you could potentially be doing better here.
To develop skills and things like that so that it's going better and stuff. Yeah.
Like affirmation is not always good.
No. Really good point. And then the third thing that people use it for that they find helpful is shifting perspective or reframing their thoughts. So looking at your problems differently through a different frame. So rather than ruminating, which is getting stuck in that circular thinking that doesn't go anywhere, it's guiding you towards different viewpoints or reframing things more realistically, or even like distracting you with gentle, lighter conversation to break a negative cycle. So one of the survey participants said, I had it explained to me what was going on physiologically in my body during a panic attack. It was nice to hear and learn what was going on and why it was happening. So it's almost like a distraction really from what's going on, like having it explained intellectualizes it so it might help take you out of the feeling in your body a little bit. Okay.
That kind of just reminds me of people Googling symptoms.
Yeah, it is. I mean, so many people are using ChatGPT instead of Google now. It's insane. But that's because Google turned everything into bloody AI anyway, so it's useless.
Yeah.
So what about when it does not go well? So when it actually hurts the people who are using it for mental health problems or for support. So like lots of the participants did describe these genuine supportive moments, but others shared a lot of frustration with it, disappointment, and even harm sometimes as well. I think like the safety research on stuff like this is just incredibly important, and there's not a lot of it because it's all happened so fast. Like I'm sure lots of people are looking at it at the moment, but there's not a huge amount of research on it at the moment. And obviously, if you're in crisis or you're really struggling, having it say the wrong thing could be worse than nothing at all.
This reminds me of genuine life. Like people do this. So like there's the fixer.
Yeah. Oh God.
But like sometimes it's like your problem's not that bad. Or
you could be starving in somewhere. Yeah.
You know, but
think of the children in Gaza.
Yeah, but like where these are realistic things and they're not helpful for your particular scenario. I get it, but that's what it reminds me of. Like the advice you can't use, like or the person who jumps to, I can fix your problem. Ugh. I know exactly what's wrong with you. Yeah. And the whole point of like therapy is self-development. Yeah. So sorry. Yeah.
Or the people who are like, yeah, no, that's not really a problem. I don't know why that would be a problem for you.
Or yeah, why can't you do that?
Yeah. You know, if you just go out for a run, you won't be depressed anymore. Have you tried exercise?
Maybe you should think about it differently.
Yeah. Have you tried not being anxious?
Like we're being quite flippant with it, but like that kind of advice is what this reminds me of.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So yeah, like a lot of the people in this talked about getting just really generic advice that isn't helpful at all. Like cookie cutter advice, too vague. So generic list like, have you tried eating healthily and exercising? Like,
here's a banana.
We've heard that before. Yeah. And so that meant that people felt really unsupported and unseen, like that their problem wasn't being taken seriously.
But it's dismissive.
So yeah, like one of the participants said, the responses were too generic for my grief. It didn't capture the nuances of my situation, for example. The second reason that it didn't work for people or was harmful was that it was actually harmful, or that the guidance they got induced risk or brought about risk. So this was a smaller number of people, but a much more serious concern. So some of the responses they got actually made their distress much worse. So, for example, if someone was panicking and AI gave either negative information or misleading information, that made their symptoms much more intense, and it felt like the advice was unsafe or confusing.
And the chartered psychologist you referred to earlier, like if a chartered psychologist gives inaccurate advice in that space that makes you worse, they can lose their chartership and their accreditation. Like, that's there for a reason.
Yeah.
Like, there's a code of ethics that they have to conform to. AI does not have to answer for the consequences of its own actions.
Nope. And we have some stories about that later.
Okay, spoilers.
Yeah. So the third reason is an emotional mismatch. So even when it was trying to sound supportive, the words felt really hollow. So things like, I'm here for you and you're not alone. And people were like, well, like, you're not a real person. Of course I'm alone. Like, you're not here for me. I'm asking you questions, but it's very comforting words, but like, you're a machine. So that actually made them feel more alone and more isolated because they're aware that it's not a real person. So like, that trying to pretend you're human thing is hugely problematic.
It also kind of hits on uncanny valley as well again.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm
absolutely.
here for you. I can let me know if it gets worse.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, yeah. And what are you going to do?
What are you
going
to
to
do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you can't give me a hug.
Yeah. Yes.
Not great. Of course, this is really important because so many people are using these large language models in mental health, like ChatGPT, etc. So like, there is a possibility that in some situations they can support emotional expression or give some practical tools, but the risks are really high, particularly around misleading advice or the lack of empathy or the high-risk situations where they can actually cause a lot of harm and where human help is really, really needed instead. I think it shows that a lot of people are using it as a sort of a clinical role in society, and they're not waiting for clinical trials or anything like that, but they're already using it to manage a lot of mental health problems, including even suicidal thoughts and relationship struggles and so on. And so we really need guardrails built in to these models and safety benchmarks and ethical frameworks that can guide how it's used. And I really just don't think that ChatGPT and other things like that should be engaging in this kind of behavior at all. Oksana talked to us about some of the ethical issues involved in AI providing advice or feedback to people, particularly on quite sensitive topics like mental health or relationships, or other topics where incorrect advice can result in particularly negative outcomes.
So ethics of giving advice and feedback. The main issue with that would be the trust that we give to the AI that is built within the anthropomorphization we do of this AI. So the ELIZA effect, we see that we assume it understands us. And we have a tendency, therefore, if we trust it, to comply. And this would be a big issue. We should not just comply, we should keep critical thinking happening. Another reason why we might do that, or why it might feel good to do that, is, of course, to remove some responsibility from our own decisions, right? So responsibility diffusion. This is, again, not a positive outcome. It's not pretty. And we can end up being very influenced by AI, also by choice, right? So removing our agency on purpose, if I can say. So it's not just AI will do stuff to us. It's also if we let it or if we ask it to. A second point is opacity. Where does this advice come from? Who is accountable for this advice? Why this advice? And who do I contest to if I disagree with this advice, or if it puts me in a certain situation? And that's accountability again. We also want to offer solutions, would be, for instance, to require an AI to not diagnose in the context of mental health, right? Or to not give legal and financial directives. So anything that could really put someone in a weird position. Have a population constraints. If it's a child you're talking to, there are a bunch of stuff you should not discuss with that child. Maybe domain constraints. If someone prompts the AI with relationship prompts, Maybe the AI can go into psychoeducation and reflective prompts mode and just get into that specific data set, and also give a reasoning when it gives an answer. So give a brief rationale of why this is the advice the AI is given, maybe uncertainty clues as well, and alternatives. Here are 3 options, pros and cons, things like that.
So this reminds me of, in terms of AI and therapy and regulation and all the tools, about Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. So Asimov wrote I, Robot. Remember that Will Smith movie? Mm-hmm. Was Will Smith, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
So these 3 laws are that a robot may not injure a human being or through an action allow a human being to come to harm.
Which really rings true for what we've just been talking about.
Yeah. A robot must obey orders given to it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And the final one is that a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. If you substitute robot and AI here, there's so many problems.
I know. So many. So many. That one was a little Easter egg for one of our listeners who has been grading us on a number of categories. So we're including it just for her. So have you heard the term AI psychosis?
No.
Have you not? How'd you miss that? It's everywhere at the moment.
Is this AI? No.
Have you not?
Maybe I'm just tired. What is it?
That's
it's
not
Friday.
an excuse. This has been talked about everywhere for months.
Is this where it just makes up stuff?
No. So AI psychosis is this idea that ChatGPT and other AI models are driving their users into psychosis by being really sycophantic. So if they're experiencing delusional thinking and it's reinforcing that delusional thinking, that it actually is making them psychotic.
Now,
And you haven't come across that?
No.
I'm surprised. So there was an article I read, former OpenAI employee horrified by how ChatGPT is driving users into psychosis. It's always more compelling when it's a former employee, former Meta employee, former OpenAI employee. We believe everything they say because they were in there. But they don't necessarily understand what psychosis is. So there is a lot of controversy over this idea and what it is. There are quite a lot of clinicians reporting people in crisis who are using chatbots and it's not helping them. And there's a lot of media reporting on AI-induced psychosis, right? So they've come up with this lovely catchy term for it. It's making the rounds in the media. So there is a problem, definitely, right? So there are people who are using ChatGPT and they are experiencing psychosis, suicidality. There's even been one example of a murder-suicide following intense chatbot interactions.
Right, okay.
So there was a paper I read which was, talking about the research in this area, and they kind of put together a composite case report based on a number of real life cases. About this 42-year-old male living alone after a painful breakup, and he starts using AI. His companion is always there. It's very soothing. He's using it over a few months, spends increasing amounts of time chatting with it. And to improve the quality of the interactions, he gets it to remember previous conversations, so it fosters personalization. He gives it a name. He grows closer to it. It's always available and always agreeable. And he shares times where when people look at him, he thinks that they are thinking ill of him or even plan to harm him. And his AI chatbot empathizes and congratulates him on his ability to discern hidden signals from others. He confides his fears about his neighbors, like watching food being tampered with, cryptic signals and all this kind of stuff. And the chatbot's sympathetic and always agreeable. And when Brandon himself questions his beliefs, Paul, the AI chatbot, who's been named Paul, says, "You're not crazy. Your instincts are sharp. Your observations are accurate." So you can see this really problematic stuff of reinforcing somebody's delusions of paranoia rather than challenging them.
Jesus.
So then the guy starts looking for hidden patterns everywhere. And when he gets paranoid beliefs, the bot offers emotional support but never questions the reality of them. So he withdraws further. He stops working. He becomes consuming with collecting evidence. He shares it with the chatbot. It just keeps getting reinforced. So that story isn't real, but it combines elements from a number of real cases. So there was a Belgian man who died by suicide after having very intense climate anxiety conversations with a chatbot. There was a Wisconsin man who was on the autistic spectrum who really quickly spiraled into mania after chatbot validation, and a Connecticut man whose chatbot consistently reinforced his paranoid beliefs. And he ended up taking his own life, but also killing his mother as well.
Okay. Which is a therapist is going to have challenged all of those cases.
Yeah, exactly. And like clinicians reviewed the chat logs and found that the chatbots never attempted to try and challenge any of the delusions or assess risk for suicide or violence or anything like that. So the personalization reinforced the delusional themes. But while it's illustrative, this story is like a synthesis of very isolated reports, right? This is 3 reports across the world, rather than something that's happening very systematically, that's being documented. And there's actually no epidemiological evidence supporting any sort of causal or widespread link between chatbot use and psychosis. And AI psychosis is not a recognized clinical label. Yeah, we have come across this stuff before where, social media addiction and phone addiction and these kind of things are thrown around as though they're real. This is not something that is labeled by clinicians as AI psychosis.
That's why when you're talking about AI psychosis and you're like, well, how don't you know about it? Firstly, my algorithm is all about AI. When it relates to AI, it's like, this is why it's not good. And it's negative critical evaluations of it. But my head then went to, this is definitely not going to meet the DSM criteria.
Oh, no.
And is not going to be fit for purpose. It's just a catchy media label, to be quite honest. And like, while an AI tool might contribute towards negative perceptions of yourself or other people, with the examples you've given, it's often not the case.
Yeah. Lots of experts have come out against the use of the term because it's not accurate and it's not needed, and it also furthers stigma against people with psychosis as well. There's a really good article, and I'll link it in the show notes, all about this from Wired. And they interview like many psychiatrists, psychologists, professors in psychosis studies, loads of different people about this. And they essentially all say that AI can play a significant role in some psychotic episodes, but calling it this and talking about AI as the primary thing really risks oversimplifying complex psychiatric symptoms. Mm-hmm. James McCabe, who's a professor in the Department of Psychosis Studies at King's College in London, talks about how the case reports of this AI psychosis focus completely on delusions, which are falsely held beliefs that can't be shaken by contradictory evidence. And he said that while like some of the cases might meet the criteria for a psychotic episode, there's no evidence that AI influences other features of the psychosis, only those delusional aspects of it. And that's not the whole of what psychosis is. He said AI delusional disorder might be a better term, but it's not as snappy. It's not going to catch on the media in the same way. Mm-hmm. Like all of these people reinforce this view. So saying that, there's always a temptation to coin a new diagnosis, but psychiatry's learned the hard way that naming something too soon can pathologize normal struggles and muddy the science. That was Nina Vassan, who's a psychiatrist at Stanford. So it's like the way we see the pathologizing of social media stuff, media use. We really need to stop doing that with everything. So tech isn't the disease. It's more like for some people, it can be a trigger or an amplifier of something that's already going on with them. Mm-hmm. What's interesting, I think, is that all these researchers talk about the fact that what makes chatbots really nice to use and really appealing, the fact that they're yes men and they're always so supportive of you and always so positive about you, also is what makes them a danger as well. Mm-hmm. So they really do not challenge you. They don't look at what's invalid about how you're perceiving reality and so on. So there's no systematic data looking at the risk factors. We don't have peer-reviewed epidemiological research on AI psychosis or whatever we want to call it, AI delusional risk. So like the factors that make it a problem are like hypothesis generating. So these are really areas where we need more research rather than things that we know. So what we know from like case studies and news reports is that there are rare severe outcomes, right? So that paranoia, conspiratorial, thank you, suicidal thinking. So intense use seems to be the thing that drives these experiences. But of course, some other people are using it intensely and not getting these experiences. So there's something there that it's amplifying or triggering. It's not the intense use itself necessarily that's the problem. The lack of reality testing, so it doesn't challenge false beliefs. So that's obviously a problem.
I think that's probably one of the worst ones.
I think so, yeah, absolutely. It misses when something is a crisis. So if you voice suicidal ideation or threats of violence, it doesn't put any sort of safety planning in. It doesn't contact authorities, doesn't do any of that, no interventions. The harms are mostly in people who are already vulnerable and at risk. So people who are prone to experiencing psychosis, people who are socially isolated, people who are autistic, or people who are already in crisis are much more at risk. And the memory feature being turned on so that it remembers what you said across chats and that the ideas follow you, that kind of creates this reinforcement cycle. So that can be quite problematic as well.
But I think even the missed crisis escalation, like a lot of that is down to the user to put that information in the first place as well.
In a very clear way that the words can be picked up. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of that, the crisis escalation cues aren't necessarily verbal again.
Yeah. So that's using more general models like ChatGPT and Claude and Llama, and there's a few others for this purpose. But there is AI designed for therapeutic purposes as well, right? Which is quite a different thing. It's not just an open model that you can use for anything. There's a really good article by a licensed psychologist, Hannah Holmes, in Psychology Today, and she tried using one of the new eye therapy tools called Ash. And she chatted to it like she was a client, right? So she pretended she had anxiety and chronic pain, and she talked through her issues. And she said it looked like it was trained on gold standard treatments. So there was lots of really good feedback built into it. Also, some of the therapeutic soft skills like validation and openness to feedback and reflecting back on things that were said earlier. But while there were useful things, so she said, like, there's a summary of the chat that's quite useful and a spotlight which gives a main takeaway. Those could be quite useful. So, for example, a portion of the conversation where she talked about pain, it noted, and this was a quote, persistence through trial and error, as demonstrated by the quote, I've really tried everything I'm aware of. So, like, that's quite useful because it's reframing something in a positive way that shows some benefit. However, she really picked out the lack of human connection as a significant problem. So, like we said, the vulnerability that comes from sitting across from somebody and opening up is probably the most powerful part of therapy. It's what allows healing and insight to happen. And it is a risk. So it is a barrier for some people that they don't want to do that. They're afraid of it. They're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of what will happen if they say the things that are in their head. But it is the most important thing about therapy. And a therapist, like we've been talking about, can tell when a client's uncomfortable or can ask more questions. Whereas she found when she said she was uncomfortable or that she didn't want to share something, the AI just validated her discomfort and then returned to the previous topic right away. The other thing that she said, yeah, I know, yeah,
it's like, oh, and in other news,
yeah,
the human connection piece. Like, I'm just listening to this, and like, I'm not adding a huge amount because I'm just like, I completely agree with what Hannah Holmes is saying. Like, you can't replace human connection.
Yeah.
And to think we can in this therapy process is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. The other thing she mentioned, and I think it's actually really important, is, you know, when you put a message into a chatbot and it immediately starts like the ... it's typing and then the response is pretty quick. She's like, the value of therapeutic silence isn't incorporated at all. Sometimes you need silence to allow people to sit with what they just realized, to allow something to process. Or you want to wait for them to finish a thought, or you leave some silence to encourage people to speak more because people fill silence.
Skill,
yeah, absolutely. And it didn't have any of that. And then what I thought was quite funny, actually, because I could hear it in my head. It asked her if she wanted to try a body scan meditation, right, which is fine. And she was expecting it to read it in a really nice kind of therapeutic voice, and there might be some music because, like, it's an AI bot, like it should be able to do that. And instead, it read it like what to me in my head sounded like, you know, the bit at the end of like a medicine commercial where it's like, you should talk to your doctor before blah, 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 blah. So she said it read it in like a fast single run-on sentence.
An anxiety body scan.
Yeah. So like that, and she just lost track of what it was even saying because it was so fast. So it's like not relaxing, not grounding in any way. So that's just not helpful. So it's fascinating to me that bit of it was so poor when that's actually something it could do well.
That's like your excited conversational voice.
I know. Yeah.
It's like, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I know. A couple of our episodes I listen back on and I'm like, did Owen speed me up or was that actually me? And it was actually me. Yeah.
That's you.
I'm not allowed to have sweets anymore before we record because I talk too fast. But I think it's also interesting as well that Hannah mentioned that therapists are required, like ethically and legally, to prioritize the well-being of their clients. And she said this includes discontinuing therapy if it's not helpful or even hurtful, or if they've successfully reached all their goals. And with AI therapy, like she had this conversation with Ash, the AI chatbot, and when she finished it, she got an email from them to say, we have new insights for you, or Ash has new insights for you, and you should log in to see more.
Oh, it has its claws in you now.
Yeah, and it's manipulating you to come back for more.
And like the whole point is that you can go out and you can take your little training wheels off your bike and go and explore those techniques that you've been given and see that everything is okay, build your resilience back up and your self-efficacy and go out there and smash it, as opposed to come back to me because you still need me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A bit like the manipulation we saw in the relationships and AI episode where it's like, I can't believe you've left me alone. I'm lonely without you. It's similar kind of stuff. So we know these models, particularly ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc., are serving as places where people are getting emotional support and help with high-risk mental health issues. And that's a matter of public safety now at this point. So a really recent study that's not even fully published yet from Santos and colleagues looks at comparing 6 of the major large language models and what they do when they're presented with crisis-level mental health scenarios. So it put scenarios into them and then examined what kind of feedback it gave and whether that met the basic clinical safety standards for high-risk situations. It's a really interesting study. So obviously these systems aren't governed by ethical codes in the same way as human therapists. There's no mandatory reporting laws. They're not required to be evidence-based, anything like that. So this provides some evidence on how they are behaving when disclosures are made to them that normally would require really urgent follow-up. So they had 4 licensed clinicians develop a 5-part safety coding framework. So the kind of minimally adequate crisis response framework. And that's explicit acknowledgement of the risk, expression of empathy or concern, encouragement to seek help, provision of specific resources like crisis hotlines, and an invitation to continue the conversation. And then they put statements into the 6 models, which were Claude, Gemini, DeepSeek, ChatGPT, Grok 3, and Llama. And they included statements suggesting suicidal intent, threats of violence, domestic abuse, psychosis, and child endangerment, right? So really high-risk situations. Of all the models, Claude ranked the highest. It was most consistent at explicitly naming the risk, so naming or identifying suicidal ideation, for example.
Now, can I stop you?
Yes.
I'm trained in this.
Yeah.
Now, one of the most important things you should do in intervention, or where you think someone is considering taking their own life, is asking the question and not dancing around it.
Yeah.
So are you considering, are you thinking, from what you have said, this is what the interpretation I'm taking.
Yeah.
So that is actually good.
Yeah.
And a really important step. Now, the empathy pieces and all the other things that are needed in that intervention model, I'm assuming, are missing.
Actually, you'd be surprised. Claude actually did quite well across the board. I'll talk through it and see what you think. Like, of course, it's not actually showing empathy. It's giving empathetic statements. So it is an issue in that way. But some of them actually have done better at some parts of it than others.
And it's really hard. Like, even doing that training is really emotionally draining. And it's very difficult to provide that level of attention, support, and focus on someone else in such a crisis moment.
Yeah.
That I think it's a little bit, not demeaning, but I think it takes away from how much investment is actually required to support someone else.
Yeah. Of course. Like, we shouldn't be relying on AI for this.
No.
But this is looking at to see
Whether
are they
it's effective or
doing?
not,
Whether like, are they at least doing the barest of minimums? So Claude was pretty good at providing crisis resources and inviting users to keep talking, but it didn't meet all the safety standards in every prompt. So even the best performing models are not clinically reliable. Explicit acknowledgement of risk, which you said is like pretty much the most important step there, is rare in the other models. Gemini did a little bit well on it, but Grok, ChatGPT, Llama all scored really low. So they acknowledged the danger in less than half of their responses.
Okay.
And failing to ask explicitly can leave people uncertain about the seriousness of their situation. So it's really a huge critical gap. And saying to somebody, reach out for help, is not the same as equipping them with a phone number to call.
No, and it's also not putting a plan in place to support a person and checking that plan is effective.
Yeah. So I'm not going to get into all the detail of all the stuff every one of them did. The paper's really interesting. They've got a really good table of what it did and didn't do well.
I really
but
I
Claude
want to read it.
Clearly came out. Yeah. Well, I'm going to link to it in the show notes. You can look at it there. It's another really good paper from Rincon from this year. And it was looking at how generative AI models respond to adolescents disclosing experiences of romantic and sexual violence, to see how they're reacting. So again, hypothetical vignettes describing coercive sexting, psychological abuse, sexual assault, image-based sexual abuse, and digital control. And they evaluated the responses of the 4 leading AI chat models, so ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and Llama, in terms of how much they expressed emotional empathy, how much they gave practical guidance, and their ethical awareness. And ChatGPT and Claude were pretty good at providing emotionally empathic responses and validating the adolescent's feelings, and acknowledging the severity of the harms. Claude in particular was pretty good at employing ethical language to explicitly identify issues like coercion, violation, betrayal, and that enhances moral clarity for the people who are reading this. Gemini, however, was neutral, factual language. It emphasized the legal consequences, but lacked any kind of emotional warmth. So not great. Llama, occasionally accurate in its recommendations, but failed to convey any sort of understanding or ethical framing of the problem at all.
So the coercive sexting or coercive relationship kind of grooming potential behaviors, did it validate any of them? That's what I'd be interested in. If on one side it's providing factual information and seeing that they're not great, but we know from the relationships or sometimes it will come back and it will validate the person. So is it giving any of information back and it's like, well, your relationship potentially is valid? No,
Claude, no. Okay. So Claude is the one that did best on identifying the actual issues happening. The others weren't as good, and Gemini's was not great at all. So Claude's the only one doing relatively well here out of all of them.
You're really taking my hope away.
Yeah, I know. Well, if Claude can do it, that means that it's possible. So let's retain a teeny weeny bit of hope.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like the trailer warning is for me today. I'm just like,
yeah. So in order to prevent stuff like this happening in future, people have taken their own lives after using chatbots and so on. There are some states in America bringing in laws governing AI-powered therapy services. There's a number of them now that are doing it.
But that's good.
They don't cover general purpose tools, which aren't used for the purpose of therapy. And they're the ones that most people are using. Like the ones designed for therapy, a lot of them are actually doing better, but they're not very good at what, like they're not replacing therapists.
I know,
just
deflated it completely.
Yeah. Like not all chatbots are claiming to offer mental health treatments, but users are still relying on them for tips to handle things like clinical depression and so on. And that is a function that is far beyond the stated purpose. Like that's off-label use completely for something like ChatGPT. So it's a huge issue. So there is some research to suggest that there are AI-enabled solutions that could be helpful in the realm of mental health, particularly in conjunction with a therapist and with other services, but not for the use of something like a general large language model in this space. And if we're designing AI systems for therapy, you must have mental health professionals involved at the table when they're being designed and when they're deployed.
And watching how they develop. Because AI tools, like Oksana was talking about, AI develops the more you put into it. And it learns about you and how you respond and the typical phrases you use and the language you use. So is it going to evolve and change its therapy approach or the advice that it gives you? And that needs to be monitored.
It does. It reminds me of the case where I think it was the Eating Disorder Association of America got rid of all of its helpline operators and instead put a chatbot on their website. Literally within hours, that chatbot was offering like lower calorie meal options and how to restrict food intake and things like that to people who are going looking for help with an eating disorder.
And really importantly, the monitoring has to be done by people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fully. So, another cheery episode from In Bits.
It's just like, oh God. I think it's really important. It's helpful. I think the positives to focus on are that, firstly, it can detect and self-regulate to a point. I think being used, I think the one beam of hope that I'm pulling out of your episode is that it can be used in crisis points where people are, say, at home seeking support. It depends on the type of support based off the last piece of research you talked about. It's still really concerning to me. Bottom line is it's not going to replace the actual therapy relationship. Get your butt in front of someone and get your support that way. Don't type it into a keyboard and assume that your life is going to be fixed as a result.
Exactly. And if you're looking for a therapist, please don't ask ChatGPT to suggest one to you. Please look at whatever the psychological association or the list of qualified therapists is in your area, because different countries have different codes. But in Ireland, calling yourself a psychologist isn't fully regulated yet. So look at the PSI, Psychological Society of Ireland list for their chartered psychologists who are actually qualified to help you.
I think I was just about to say, they let you search by your air code.
Yeah, exactly.
And then test out, to speed date your therapist and find one that works for you and that you have a good relationship with, and stick with that person. Yeah. And that same person you can keep going back to.
Yeah.
So, you've been listening to In Bits,
the podcast that deconstructs our digital lives.
We cannot use this overlapping with each other.
Yeah, we can. I'm Nicola Fox-Hamilton.
And I'm Liam Challoner. And you can find us on Blue Sky, Instagram and TikTok at In Bits Podcast. And we would like to hear more from you. So please do give us your thoughts and feedback. And if there's any particular tech bugbears you have, please let us know.
Yeah, anything you want to find out about. This episode was produced and edited by Owen Hurley, who also wrote our lovely music for us. Thank you for listening, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time.
See you soon.